I can't stress enough the importance of getting rigorous, systematic, automated feedback loops in place. That's true anyway. Building any software, I've always believed that. I grew up that way at Pivotal Labs, pair programming, test-driven development. But it's never been more true than working with this sort of non-deterministic technology. Like, I don't know how you get anywhere without having that kind of infrastructure in place. It takes a little bit of forethought, a little bit of patience, although you can generate a lot of this stuff now, right? So less patience than it would have taken before. I would highly recommend being rigorous about what you're doing. That's always been true for me.
Automate the feedback loop. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Deployed. We're joined by Nathan Sobo from Zed. If you don't know Zed, it is a new code editor built from the ground up in Rust with performance in mind as the big priority, multiplayer from the start. They've been working on it for a few years now, since before any kind of AI code editing was cool. And now we're in this moment where everyone's looking at new editors again. Zed is uniquely high performance, really awesome. And he's going to talk about their latest agentic editing features they've just added, what they've done to just build the product overall. It's always fun talking to Nathan because he's one of the fortunate founders who gets to build his product, using his product entirely, and he's kind of building it for himself, which I'll talk about. It's also a fun conversation because we sit in the same building together. We're here together in Boulder, Colorado, getting to build companies, and it's a ton of fun to get to have him on for you all to get to hear from him. He's deeply passionate about what he does and has learned a ton making an agentic editor that really works at scale for high taste, serious developers. So we'll jump in. Thanks, Nathan, for joining us. Enjoy the conversation. All right. What's up, Nathan? Thanks for joining us today. Excited to chat and hear more about what you're up to. Why don't we start with just letting you give a bit of an intro to everybody listening. Tell us who you are. Tell us about Zed.
So yeah, I'm the founder of Zed. And our goal is to build the world's best code editor. And that's very much collided with this emerging world of AI and LLMs and all of the exciting activity around applying this new tech to writing software. But I've been working on this problem since long before I ever knew that I was going to be able to interact with a machine in natural language and have it spit out code.
Since way before it was cool to work on this problem.
I thought it was cool, but yeah, I don't think that many people agreed. And but for me, it's always been, as a programmer, my kind of gateway to the world is software. I've just never been quite satisfied with any of the tools that were on offer, including a previous one that I wrote as well for creating the software.
Yeah, you worked on Atom at GitHub for people that don't know your background.
Right. So that was a previous code editor. And we actually invented a framework called Electron in the process of creating Atom. And that was all, it was the Atom shell. That's how it got the name Electron, orbital shell or whatnot. But the idea with Atom was to make it super extensible, let anyone use familiar web tech to tweak how it looked or how it behaved. And so that was why we created Electron. But I got to a certain point with that project where I was just like, the editor I want to use is not possible to build on this tech stack. That was sort of the conclusion I came to. God, it was probably late 2017, I finally just came to that decision. And from that point forward, it was what's next? What do we really need to do? And that's what Zed is revisiting all of the fundamental assumptions undergird how we write modern desktop applications, basically, to deliver the tool that I actually wanted to use. And so that, and rather than building Zed like a web page, which we've done with Atom, and VS Code kind of carried on in that tradition, and now it has a million forks. They're all sort of basically web pages that are masquerading as desktop apps. We decided to get closer to the middle and build Zed more like a video game. So really leveraging the graphics processor, writing code that runs on the GPU, using Rust, which is a native compiled programming language with no runtime, no garbage collector that pauses the program and causes frames to be dropped. The goal was sort of this very fluid, responsive environment that could really also tap into the underlying power of multi-core hardware, these great GPUs that just every machine has in them. It's a very different world than the web browser kind of evolved to serve. and only really available by kind of routing around that technology. So that was the big inspiration for Zed.
You guys are one of the only pieces of software that I'm encounter on a regular basis that talks about frame rate. That's like a distinctive part of your world. And also like keystroke latency, right?
Right. And the goal is sort of never, the reason we talk about frame rate is I never want to feel like my tool is sort of the source of friction that's slowing me down. One thing I do is I have always done, I overclock my keyboard repeat rate and it lets me move my cursor faster. But from the very beginning, I've been dropping frames. So, I'd see the cursor move, and then it would skip 2 lines or whatever, right? As whatever editor I was using, choked on the updates. It really just started with, how do I never have that happen again? The point of Zed is to revisit the editor on a foundational level, really advance the state of the art for what does it mean to be a text editor and a code editor. And a big thing that we baked in from the beginning was collaborative data structures. So every document that you could open in Zed, we call them a buffer. Every buffer you open is fundamentally built on top of this eventually consistent data structure that sort of lets you edit it collaboratively or allows sort of multiple real-time sources of edits to interleave cleanly. That was originally designed for humans, but now we have these handy new human-like entities that will respond on the drop of a dime. So I don't know, it's feeling like a good or fortuitous choice to focus on that.
So yeah, I think the first time I saw a Zed demo a couple of years ago, that was the demo that you got on Slack with some other people at the office, and they started just showing up in the files, and you guys were working together on some edits, and that was something I don't think anyone in the room had ever seen before. That part alone felt novel. Now fast forward, everybody's interested in revisiting the code editor. You mentioned that was a good paradigm, set you up well for AI to weave in. Everyone knows about Cursor and Windsurf and the hotness in the market right now. Tell us a little bit about how you think about this moment in the broader market and people revisiting their tools. How do you think about where Zed fits into that ecosystem? It would be cool to hear you just kind of share your perspective.
It is a cool moment for someone that's been, dedicated 15 plus years of their life trying to build a great code editor, because people are on the hunt for a new editor. Suddenly it's a topic in people's minds. And that maybe wasn't the case a few years ago, even though for me personally, I didn't feel like the status quo was good enough for me. I needed to push that forward. But now it just seems like more people are interested in the idea of a new editor. And in a world where everybody's which is what I would do too, had I not spent, many years sort of advancing the state of the art and building my own editor from the ground up, I would probably be forking an open source editor as well. But in a world where there's enough market demand and incentive for everyone to want to go do that, I like having sort of our own unique, differentiated tech stack. I mean, it comes with trade-offs because we've had to build all of that. And it's code that, a lot of it, I think we built incredibly well. And so the maintenance cost is not a huge deal, but it's still a lot of surface area to own that, some entrants in the market don't have to own because they've sort of built on top of someone else's foundation.
But you guys have done the hard work. You've built this incredibly high performance editor that's different. It feels like that's one of the key things I see from, being a little further away. You've got a differentiated experience. Nobody else can make that fast.
Right, exactly. I think the thing we lead with, the number one thing, is speed. But I think there's more to it than just speed. First of all, over 500,000 lines of Rust that is pretty much owned by one team, just us. And I think there's a big opportunity there to have sort of it be more moldable in our hands rather than having to kind of retrofit onto an existing architecture that maybe was designed by a different team at a different time in a different situation, right? So I'm excited for sort of more of the underlying control that we have to continue to be surfaced. Already there are details in the way that we've structured things to be inherently collaborative that just make for a really cool experience, the ability to follow the agent around. Like, you interact with the agent in the typical way. You click these crosshairs and you're just like following the agent through your code base. It's like streaming the edits in. But again, you could like stop following and start typing, and its edits would cleanly interleave with stuff that you're doing. And so just having built this entire setup to be very kind of multi-agent inherently when the agents were just going to be people, it's just working out well now when we have these multiple sources of change. Yeah, and I'm excited to play that forward. So I think we have a unique offering, which is like nobody is going to be able to match Zed's performance. I mean, maybe like Vim or some of these terminal emulators, but the barrier to entry of a terminal-based emulator or a terminal-based editor that runs inside an emulator, I think is a lot higher than a desktop tool that just you sort of open it up, the mouse works. It's a more familiar, approachable experience being a full-blown editor. And I don't think anybody, certainly not building on web technology, is going to be able to match our performance. Hopefully in time, some of these deeper advantages will also begin to make themselves ever more apparent.
No, that's awesome. Well, I mean, let's talk about those. Like most people listening to this show are in the, engineering and development world. So they're going to appreciate all of that just at the foundation level. It's also a lot about building AI products. You just mentioned some of the new stuff that I think you launched last week, right? But like the agentic editing discussion you just had, like streaming edits. Maybe we like shift a little bit there. Like, first of all, congrats on a big launch. Tell us, like, what did you launch? Like, give us the basics for somebody who hasn't been following along.
So yeah, we launched agentic editing in Zed, which is basically the ability to sort of dialogue with an agent. I think our flagship model we launched with was from Anthropic, but we support local models even. We support bring your own API keys and work with models from various providers. And then Zed also has like a hosted offering for just maximal convenience, where we provide the model compute. And you basically are dialoguing with a model as it is doing tool calls, and it's basically embedded in your code base with you. So that was like a really exciting development for us, is that the big model providers are kind of incorporating some of this agentic editing capability or agentic capabilities directly into their models. And so it becomes about like kind of bathing this thing in an environment where it has access to tools, so it can kind of reach out and interact with your code base, grep across it, open files, and then also take action in the world that it's in. And our job became less about kind of integrating all of that, or, there's still plenty of that work to do, but it was more about like just surfacing a fabulous UI for that model calling tools in a loop experience, if that makes sense. So a lot of that had to do with just like tracking the edits that the model performed, surfacing that in a really intuitive way in this construct inside of Zed called a multi-buffer, which is just this sort of synthetic buffer that brings together multiple places in your code base, even if they're spanning across files, in sort of one surface that looks and feels like one file, essentially. But it's actually this composite file coming together from across your code base. That was something that we'd already had in Zed. And other editors, I think, can kind of imitate this by like cobbling together multiple editors or something. But this is like a very deep concept inside the Zed code base.
Yeah, it's been there for a while.
Yeah, exactly. And like your Vim bindings work nicely over it if that's your speed. You can do multi-cursor edits across multiple files and like save them all at once. So it was just cool to like be able to grab some of the diff rendering infrastructure that we built out for Git, which we launched a couple months back, and package that all together in what is essentially just like let an agent take action on your behalf. Yeah, let something be your agent in your code base. But the goal has always been, how do we keep you engaged with what the heck is going on? If that's of interest to you. If it's not, we built this little notification system where you could go do something else. And if Zed's in the background, we're sort of like, hey, it's done, come review it, and make the review experience great. And then we added this like following thing where we're sort of streaming those edits as they're flowing in real time and really letting you moment by moment, frame by frame, even, at 120 frames per second, see exactly what is going on. So I'm excited about kind of the existing capabilities that we'd invested in and how they came together in concert with this incredible new tech to unlock a pretty unique experience. Yeah.
I mean, that's part of, I think, probably a lot of people listening have used something like Cursor, right? Like they've done the Hello World at least. And, one of the things that like I've noticed is, if you ask the agent to make a change, it's going to like, you kind of sit there and you're waiting and you're not quite sure, like, am I supposed to just sit here and wait? Like, can I edit anything else while it's working? Like, I'm worried it's going to break something. And so you end up in this kind of like chat, pause, dialogue, and just like kind of hope for the diff to come back, right? And I love what you guys are pursuing there, just like being able to keep people just like moving quickly, go task the agent, do something else. Like, it sounds like the promise of that is, pretty different from what a lot of folks might be used to.
First and foremost, I just want to be a great software development experience, period. And so a big part of that is like, yeah, I'm getting leverage from an LLM doing some rote task that I don't want to do, but I could articulate pretty clearly to it what needs to happen. Or in the case where I am switched to guns and I'm inside the editor actively editing, just this feeling of things feeling fluid, never getting bogged down. Just that performance minimalism is another big thing for us, of just making sure that like we're presenting your content in a way that the editor kind of disappears from your mind. Like if you look at Zed and really think about it, you're like, oh, that looks, my goal is like that you should think that looks great. But then when you're using it, I really do want it to disappear and just fade into the background so you can stay in flow with the content you're actually working with.
That's great. I mean, let's talk about some of the AI stuff. I think the work that you've done recently, just like tactically, I think a lot of people listening to this call will be curious about whatever you're willing to share. But, I think you're one of the rare people where like your product is code gen. I think the, code gen is super promising. A lot of other people listening to this are probably doing text generation all day long. Like what's been different, code and a chatbot are like different things, right? What have been some of the hardest like things you've had to overcome to get like these models doing the right thing, the agent behaving correctly in Zed?
I mean, there are different pieces to it. One is just like an overall different approach to testing than we've ever had to take. So that's been a learning curve we've been traversing of, testing in Zed is like, it's really the backbone of Zed. You don't build an editor, a tool this complex that's native, which means that like dereferencing a null pointer is a panic, like game over for the entire program. It's gone. It's not just like a stack trace in the corner or something, without like really rigorous testing. But up until now, almost all of our testing has been very deterministic in nature. Like even non-deterministic parts of the system, we'll like lock down and simulate randomness in a sort of deterministic way, even at the networking layer, some of the collab stuff we built. But with LLMs, all of that kind of goes out the window. Like kind of non-determinism is sort of fundamental to the nature of how these things behave. It's like this black box component, and there's literally no way to know what it's going to do without actually seeing what it does. Like with software, you could fool yourself into thinking you know what it's going to do by reading the code, but like not so with sort of the parameters and the input prompt of this crazy, multi-billion parameter system or trillion parameter, whatever we're up to now. Yeah, that was a process of just like, how do we deal with something that sort of, it didn't pass or fail, it sort of passed at a certain rate, and we're trying to climb that hill. A lot of the same ideas apply, and then some new ones do as well. So that was an interesting kind of like meta challenge for the team, one that we're honestly still traversing. Like,
yeah, for sure. I mean, most teams are like, evals are hard, and getting evals that like really give you confidence is hard. Your world is even more complex than most folks doing this kind of work.
Right. And it's like unit testing is also hard, and they have more in common than one might think initially. Like it's just sort of this stochastic bit or not. So that was a big one.
They truly emerge in your world. It's different if you're like generating a big block of text, like unit tests and evals, like there's a blurry line. I don't know. Is that how you guys have experienced it?
Very much so. Yeah. I mean, like working on the streaming edits, I mean, that's like an interesting case study that we talked a bit about, like what that unlocked from an experience perspective is this staying in flow as you're watching the edits flow in. But like, how do we pull that off? We started, our first approach to edits was using Anthropic's tool calling support, where we would ask it for kind of old text and new text. Like, tell me what to find, I'll find it and replace it with some new text. That was sort of the best we could come up with in terms of how to express edits effectively with these things. But if you just go with the pure tool calling approach, it doesn't stream, right? So it will basically tell you old text and it's like a field in some JSON or whatever, right? And you'll get kind of key value. But if the value is like a really long string that it's generating, like at least with the API in the state as it was when we launched 2 weeks ago, I mean, everything's changing at light speed.
Claude 4 came out today for anybody who's like watching this later. That's moment in time that we're at.
I haven't even checked up, like maybe they've lifted this restriction. But so for us, what we had to do is kind of a hybrid approach where we let it do a tool call and sort of tell us, hey, I want to perform an edit. So we go ahead and broke the problem down, but it's fairly simple, into sort of a tool call that the main agentic loop performs to like kind of express the intent of doing an edit. I want to edit this file. I want to make the following changes. And then we basically take that little tool call and sort of loop it back to the same model and have the entire conversation and the tool call that it performed, the whole history of everything, and it's all in cache, ready to go. And then we're just like, all right, now don't do any tool calls. I just want you to stream XML to be in your output, right? I want you to stream old text in an XML tag, new text in an XML tag, and then we can do the parsing for that in a streaming way completely manually.
That's a good workaround.
Yeah. And it gave us that streaming experience. And then we do, Antonio crafted this little dynamic programming algorithm. By the way, this is all open source, so anybody could check out the code for this stuff. But as the model is like generating the output, we want to show those like the tokens as soon as we can get them. We want to sort of let the LLM feel like it's like editing the file. But that requires this like streaming diff to be computed, where as it's emitting a token, we sort of need to be coming up with the determination of like, okay, there was some text in the old text that we're not now seeing in the new text. Is that because it was deleted, or just because it hasn't yet been streamed yet by the new text? And so there's this like dynamic programming algorithm that we're doing to kind of dynamically decide what was deleted and could be kind of skipped over, or what do we need to sort of buffer and wait, like we don't quite know yet. To give you this like vibe of a streaming diff where you can literally watch it token by token, like rip through your file and sort of change it in place.
Does this all work the same across models? Like I know you said, you kind of ship first with Anthropic, you can bring your own keys now, you can, do a hosted version that's provided by Zed. Like, has that been hard to sort out to get it all to behave the same way?
Yeah, and I honestly still think we're in the middle of it. I think it doesn't behave the same across all models. And it's also like, fire up your thing in Olama. It's like a much smaller model running locally. Like, is it going to do as well as some frontier model running on some crazy supercomputer of GPUs? Like, probably not. And how many of those edges do we want to chase? But, across like the major providers, Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, we started with, just because I don't know why, it's just what we've always used. We've started on the Anthropic models, and then we're working to sort of add additional models and evolve them over time. So far, we haven't had to get too like super model specific of like, if this model is enabled, like completely change the prompt. But It is wild just watching even the smallest, seemingly innocuous changes to the way things are ordered, for example, in the edit instructions prompt, could completely tank the performance of a particular model.
That's part of why I was curious about this. It's like you're in an interesting place. I mean, I'm sure there's trade-offs, but you're in this product space where you have to make this decision. Do you give people the flexibility they want? I'm sure like data privacy and like compliance even can be a concern. People want, performance trade-offs. They want quality trade-offs. And you all have kind of taken a path where you're obligated to maintain it all. But if the models don't work well or the prompts are weird in that one case, it kind of reflects on Zed
a little bit,
the model directly.
Yeah, and I don't know how to exactly solve that. We're very freedom maximalizing across the board. We're open source code base. We're very friendly to people that want to play with local models or with LM Studio and Olama support. We're happy for people to bring their own API keys if that's what they want to do. And of course, for convenience, now it's like, we'll offer an out-of-the-box offering that we're sort of endorsing, especially for those endorsed official models. Like, I want the performance to be good. I think we're going to have to accept that, it's going to be a little bit varied across all the models. But luckily, we're an open source code base. So like people that are tinkering with, something other than the mainstream biggest thing can like participate in helping us fine tune around that particular experience.
Yeah, like, can they hack on your prompts, or is that all included in the code base?
You can hack on our prompts for sure. Yeah, we actually have a URL, zed.dev/leaked-prompts, which is just like all of our system prompts, obviously like just pulled from our open source code base. So not only can you hack on the prompts, you could, hack on any part of it. The degree to which it's like super easy yet to hack on prompts is, I still think it's a little bit like probably be building from source, which is quite easy to do. Just clone the repo, cargo run after a couple dependencies. I'd love the direction though of like opening that up more and more, like overall demystifying and just giving control to the developer. And like for me, I don't need AI to be like some secret sauce thing. Like, because we're an editor. Like, our differentiator is the entire experience, the entire code base. So I think that gives us a sort of advantage, or that's just like the way I like to operate, is being more open and collaborative.
The AI is not the whole point in your world. This is actually an interesting thing, like you and I have talked about separately, but curious to hear your take again. Like, I said some version of this to you early on, like just knowing a bunch of different developers. I've imagined that like your core community might be like less receptive on the path to, vibe coding than the average developer community. Like, what has the reaction been to what you guys have done? I'd love to hear you talk about like what's good for customers. What are you looking for in doing this, to hear from them? Like, what's your take on, what this has meant for Zed users?
Yeah, well, I mean, to build the ultimate code editor, we've had to become a little weird, I think, as developers, or atypical in how we write software and the languages we write software in, et cetera, right? Like, I came from this web background, right? We talked about Electron, trying to build an editor in JavaScript. I think that's the world in which vibe coding, or, agentic engineering, as I like to call it, just sort of, you are paying attention, but you're getting leverage from an agent or multiple agents. Like, I think the web world, that is incredibly well handled by models, and there's a lot of training data. I don't know, for whatever reason, it's just more resonant with that tech stack. We were at RustConf last week, and there are a lot of people at RustConf. I mean, some people, this is not the norm, but some people were like, oh, there's AI in your editor? I'm not interested.
Yeah, just qualifying criteria.
For whatever reason, this group of, these developers working on embedded systems, right? The kind of stuff where they're worried about someone doing a side channel attack where you're listening to the amount of current draw on some register write in the system to like be able to somehow exfiltrate the public key. You're dealing with people doing like hardcore graphics programming, stuff running on the GPU, people writing databases, right? Like, it's a very kind of hardcore set of engineers that have been writing software maybe the old-fashioned way for a very long time, and that probably are solving problems that maybe if you lined up the LLM just so with all the right input context, et cetera, it seems like some of these evals where they're solving all these really hard science problems, et cetera, show that there's probably a there, but the challenge is just like getting that intelligence lined up on target in a real world code base that's really complex. And I just think for this category of more hardcore Rust developer, there are more of them that are just like, is this really valuable? Is this a good use of time? There's more skepticism there. I think kind of Zed's mission in a lot of ways is like bridging the gap between these two worlds. It's like we've had to become hardcore and like these engineers that are a little more AI skeptical in certain ways in order to build Zed. We've had to take on all that ownership of algorithms and a lower level programming language, an understanding of what's going on with memory and threads and all of it. We've had to become really good software engineers. And yet, I don't want to be like, Digital Equipment Corporation, right? Like when the IBM PC came out in the early 80s, like who ruled the roost? It was Digital Equipment Corporation. They were these people with their computers stacked to the ceiling. Those were the real professional computer users. And the PC was just this toy. And so it's like a story as old as tech that like, yeah, the experts in sort of one paradigm maybe don't see the next paradigm coming as strongly. So I don't want to make that mistake. It's like, how can we deliver you the incredible product experience that by going deep, going down to the metal, taking ownership over broader and broader swaths and writing in Rust, but then give you all the same amount of leverage that you can get from, for people working in web stock, they're happy anyway. So it's like, yeah, our core community is Rust developers. Why is that? Because we wrote the editor in Rust. So of course, like that is a group of people that matter to us, but I don't know that their experience is like typical of all of our users, if that makes sense. There are plenty that are interested.
It's a certain niche, like everybody understands. I think like that's a like legit, community, but it's not JavaScript. It's like much less widely used. Is there like a use case that has made sense as a bridge, like multi-file like updates, or rather than doing raw code generation, like reviewing a PR or something? Like, is there an unlock that you've seen like bring people that maybe are skeptical of AI in their editor into like, oh, maybe I'm open to it?
I think edit prediction, like for whatever reason, the way we used Quinn 2.5, we're upgrading to 3 right now. And we sort of fine-tuned it in a way that made sense for us. And I saw a lot of kind of AI skeptical people, even some holdouts on the Zed team, when we landed just the ability to kind of do these Copilot style edit predictions. But we did it in such a way that it was like, we have this thing called subtle mode that you can enable, where it's just like, we have a prediction for you, but we're going to hold off showing it to you and like breaking your train of thought until you decide that you want it. So some tweaks around that, where I felt like even just getting a little bit more efficiency in like a traditional editing flow, like did make a big difference in terms of, the reaction of the kind of that, more Rust immersed AI skeptic audience. I don't know. I just have my experience, which is just like, I remember generating the renderer for GPUI 2. So we had this previous version of the UI framework before we went open source. And before we went open source, I knew that like it needed to basically be rewritten. And yeah, I mean, that was a while ago. Like that model, we have way better models than that now. I got an incredible unlock from that. And why is that? I think it was because GPT-4's training data contained how many like graphics pipelines that had been configured, but none of them had been done maybe in Rust over this particular foreign function interface, particularly crafted against the APIs and the data types. And it was like, I wanted something that exists all over the place. It's a fairly commodity thing, just a basic graphics pipeline in metal to be configured. I wanted it my way quickly. That was like that was like my like, aha, like, holy moly, this is incredibly powerful. Then there are other times where I try to use it and I find that it like didn't go that well. And it's like, is that a skill issue on my part? Is that it's just not there yet? I don't know. It is a very murky space for me. I'll put it that way. Like when it doesn't go well, and people never want to talk about the cases where they try to use AI on something and they like barked up the wrong tree or whatever, right? I don't know. I don't know if you have those cases ever, but it would be like, But again, it's no different than you're in the olden days, you're searching for something on Google and you have to look at 5 results or something. Like, there's always this like engaged exploratory process going on of how to leverage a piece of tech effectively. Yeah.
We run into this all the time. I think there's like both us using these tools ourselves and our customers who are like meta level, like trying to get their AI powered tools to work. There's this such a multivariant set of questions. Like, is this a function of the model? Is this a function of the prompt engineering? Like, if I just, work on my prompt some more, is it a function of like the tool calling or the RAG retrieval that I'm doing or whatever else? Like, if it's one of those variables, how do you know? There's like, I think people keep asking this question kind of a different way. Also, when do you know if you're done? Like, there's always seems like an unknown ceiling for what kind of incremental performance you could get in this world. I think it drives people crazy. They're looking for like, how do I know when it's good enough? And that's often where like evals come in. It's like, well, am I hitting the benchmarks I want? Let's move on. Otherwise, you could just sit and tweak this stuff forever.
I know, like, one really interesting experience was just like in that old text, new text XML thing I was talking to you about. I think almost half the time at some point we were running some higher level eval, and almost half the time the edits were panicking. I think our streaming edit parser was like panicking. And it was because the model would say open tag old text, close tag new text. It would like mismatch the XML tags. It would close the open tag with like a different tag. And I don't know if this is making sense. Like, imagine we tried to like beat it out of it in the prompt, right? And so we were able to build a little eval. We actually built this like cross-cutting assertion across all of our eval infrastructure, which is just like, did this text contain mismatch edits or not? Or at first we were just panicking. We're like, can we prompt it out of it? And we got it from like, about half or maybe 60% of the time passing to like 95% plus. But then it's like, okay, well, it's still doing this 4% of the time or whatever. So what do I want to do about this? And ultimately, I don't even know if this is the right decision. This is like revealing my edge of learning. It was like, let's go ahead and leave the evals in place that are guiding this system to like behave correctly on the theory. And I still need to like follow up and validate it, that if it's sort of being guided on the distribution to emit the XML tags correctly, that overall it's more likely to be on the right path and doing the right thing. It's less likely to just be confused. But then we still had to go in and make the parser tolerant of this situation. So it's kind of funny. It's like, was it even worth it to try to get the model to behave correctly? TBD, I guess. Yeah.
People listening to this are often in leadership roles, like curious about teams. Like, you're just, being a little vulnerable, admitting it's like, hey, edge of my learning, I'm figuring this stuff out as the founder. How have you approached kind of like staffing this work? Have you brought like new people into the company? Have like existing folks that were just like deep in the editor, like ramped up on AI? I'd be curious to hear you talk about like, how did the team learn to build in this way?
Yeah, both have happened. But I do think there's no substitute for sort of in-house learning, if that makes sense. Maybe that's just a very Zed cultural thing of like, we take responsibility. Like, when I started Zed, I had never written any graphics code, but I needed shaders to be fast. So I had to go figure it out. And so like, step one is always for us, like, own it, learn it. I love learning, so that ends up playing to my strengths.
This is a great space if that's how you feel.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot to learn in every direction. So that was a big part of it. And at first it was just kind of me. I mean, it was me like playing with ChatGPT, being like, holy cow, this thing can write code. It was writing code at like what felt like 1 token a second or whatever back in the day, when it first came out. But, it was me and Antonio, my co-founder. And over time, we've just added people. We've added people with more like AI background, although that's been a challenge because, again, you've got to have that AI background and then also be able to operate in a pretty complex Rust code base, right? It's been a bit of a unique problem, right? Similar to this, like, our mission is to bridge this divide a bit. And so, but I found just by like great if people apply to Zed. I think it's an advantage of being a code editor. It's like a product for developers. So we're well positioned to like get the interest of developers. So we've managed to hire just great people overall and putting kind of the most open-minded, creative of them on the AI specific tasks. And then it's just been about hammering that we need to get a feedback loop going, right? That's how you learn in software. Get an automated feedback loop in place, evals, it's just an extension of unit tests, and start learning. Yeah, we hired someone from Microsoft that had spent some time doing research on language models and related technology. He was early at Grammarly as well. So that's been like the key, like kind of out of house hiring, but it's really been a lot of like, developing it in-house.
That is the move that we've heard over and over again from people. It's just like it's been important to get somebody or a couple people on the team who have been living in ML tech for longer than the past 2 years. And then, people that have instincts about how to solve the problem. If X is going wrong, like, what might some of the paths look like to solve it, or like just who know the space. And then, like so much of what people are up to these days is how do we weave AI into our product? Like you need to know the product, like it's got to be production worthy code, all those things. And I think everybody's just loving learning, right? Like we talk to people all the time who are saying software was getting boring until 2 years ago, or 2.5 years now. And now it's like everyone's, animated and engaged and their brains are working again. So
like double black diamond product engineering in a way, just like everything that makes building a traditional deterministic software system hard, just add a little non-determinism and mystery and whimsy to all of that. And then you get what it's like now developing an AI integrated product. At least that's been my experience so far. Like, and why I'm glad we've made heavy investments into getting the foundations right. Because now we have new problems to solve.
No, that's cool. I'm realizing we're getting close on time. I totally should have started here. I forgot to do the shtick. Where are you in the world today?
Actually, in the neighboring office to you, here in Boulder, Colorado, staring at the Flatirons. You guys had the great foresight to acquire probably the office with the best view in this entire city, and then the generosity to sublet one of them to me.
It's not often that we do a podcast with, I guess, like in some odd way, I'm your like landlord. And for anybody that's watching, like we didn't actually have a good enough setup locally because we never record in person. So we're sitting in two different places, but like literally in the same suite. So it's fun to get to see you every day, or at least most days when we're not all out traveling. But I like got to do a quick shout out to Boulder. Like we love building companies in Boulder. You've been around for a bit. Zed is remote. It's not like your whole team is here. But like, give us a quick pitch. What's been cool about building a company in Boulder?
There would be a bunch of advantages, I bet, to being kind of in the capital, in the center of it all. But one thing that's different is like, I kind of am not cued by all those same social cues. I have my own wavelength, if that makes sense. And I think there's a certain creative freedom to that. I don't know, it comes with some disadvantages too, but the big advantage is just like I'm thinking for myself. And I think that shows in like the way Zed is branded, the way that we talk about ourselves. It comes through even in the product. And I think it extends to like hiring this remote team. Like it was crazy. We were at the Rust week in Europe last week in Utrecht, the Netherlands. And we went on a bachelor party, a purely optional bachelor party for my co-founder who's getting married. Congrats, Antonio. Anyway, the driver of our little beer bike that we got for the bachelor party was like, who here speaks English as their first language or their second language? And I was just like, oh yeah, our whole team is just from all over the world. And I think it's cool to just offer these perspectives that are kind of out. Yeah, it's like, if we were going to be not remote, it would really limit our pool to a certain set of perspectives. And I love being able to kind of draw from all over the world and have our own unique personality as a company. So I guess that's a plug of remote. But yeah, in terms of Boulder, I mean, I just love living here. It's a nice, I walked to the office today through Mapleton Hill, heard the birds singing, just showed up feeling great. Boulder's just a great quality of life.
It's a pretty special place to live and work. Yeah. We get to go out and walk out of our front door or on Pearl Street together downtown and walk along the Boulder Creek if we want to do like a, coffee meeting in the afternoon. So,
or hiking my team up to the top of the second Flatiron. It's just like, here we all are on the top of this incredible epic view. So yeah, just the harmony between like smart, creative, interesting people and beautiful, peaceful environment is top notch. Highly recommend.
It's pretty special. Well, I know we're close to time. I want to wrap and respect your time, but like maybe 2 more quick questions, like top piece of advice or like, superpower 10x kind of tool, something you found for other people that are building in this world where you're like, hey, if you're going to go down this path building AI products, a thought, and then close us out with like, what's the quick reminder for anybody who's watching, like what they should do to go get a hold of Zed and why they should?
I can't stress enough the importance of getting rigorous, systematic, automated feedback loops in place for work. I mean, that's true anyway. Building any software, I've always believed that. I grew up that way at Pivotal Labs, pair programming, test-driven development. But it's never been more true. Never been more true than working with this sort of non-deterministic technology. Like, I don't know how you get anywhere without having that kind of infrastructure in place. And I think it takes a little bit of forethought, a little bit of like patience, although you can generate a lot of this stuff now, right? So less patience than it would have taken before. I would highly recommend being rigorous about what you're doing. That's always been true for me.
Automate the feedback loop. It's a big part of, you're not talking our book, but you kind of are, because we're trying to give people the tools to do that more easily. So we agree with you on that front.
It's a good book to be talking. Yeah. And what was the second question again? How to get a hold of Zed. Zed.dev is our website. You can download the editor there. And the reason you should do that is you want to experience the future of software development a bit early. Yeah, that starts with incredible performance, extends to the ability to pull teammates directly into your editor with you and talk through code and work together in real time. And now extends to having a ton of freedom to tinker and play with local models, bring your own API key, or connect up to our hosted offering and do some vibe coding, or you do some vibe coding, and then when it doesn't work, be in an amazing, first-class, fast, professional tool that's open source.
Nathan, thanks so much for taking the time. It's great to have you on. And I'll come around the corner and give you a high five.
Sounds good.
Good to see you.
All right. That's all we have for today's episode of Deployed, the AI Product Podcast. I'm Ian Cairns, CEO and co-founder of FreePlay. I hope you enjoyed listening. And if you did, we'd love to hear about it. Your reviews mean a lot. They help other listeners. So give us a like, share, subscribe, wherever you're listening to this. And if something stood out to you in the episode, or if you've got feedback or ideas for a future episode, or if you simply just want to learn more we're up to at FreePlay, shoot me a note. I'm Ian at freeplay.ai. You can also find me on Twitter @Cairns. Thanks so much for listening.